Everything was fine. My roof stayed on and everything else. So that kind of made me feel a little better. But then when you heard about the devastation and the loss of life.
Log on to ParlView. It's the live stream of the Parliament channel. 24-hour free video on demand.
Human rights, equality and diversity. And this public hearing is being broadcast on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. I'd like to welcome the officials who are here with us from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, the Office of the Prime Minister, Gender and Child Affairs, the Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Nyan Gasvidoli, and I am the chairman of this committee. At this time, we have two committee members here with us, and I would like them to introduce themselves.
Good morning to everyone. Morning to the listening public. Esmond Ford, Member of Parliament for Tunapuna, Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kazem Hussein, Member.
At this time, I'd like to ask the members of the delegations here to introduce themselves, and we can go in the order. Ministry of Social Development and Family Services first, followed by Office of the Prime Minister, Gender and Child Affairs, and then the Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Asif Ali, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services.
Good morning. I'm Vidya Puran Singh, Director of National Family Services Division, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services.
Good morning. My name is Angelique Taylor. I am from the Policy Program Planning and Development Division.
Good morning. I am Troy Paulney, Acting Deputy Director of Social Welfare.
Office of the Prime Minister.
Good morning. I am Ian Ramdahan, Acting Permanent Secretary, Office of the Prime Minister, Child and Gender Affairs Division.
Good morning. I'm Antoinette Jack Martin, the Acting Director of Gender, Office of the Prime Minister.
Good morning. I'm Gayatri Paragas, Senior Legal Advisor, Office of the Prime Minister.
Good morning, Bertrand de Moses, Coordinator, Child Development, Office of the Prime Minister, Gender and Child Affairs.
Single Fathers Association.
Good morning. I am Randall Fields, President and Director of the Single Fathers Association, and father to two lovely boys.
Good morning. My name is Wendell Grant. I am one of the directors and also an outreach officer of the Single Fathers Association, and I've been a single parent for the last 21 years.
Morning. My name is Errol Fabian, Director of the Single Fathers Association. I'm a father.
My name is Safia Noel, Director, Children's Authority.
Good morning. Amanda Akbarali Ramdial, Acting Manager, Child and Family Services of the Children's Authority.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us this morning. In the UK in 2012, 13.5% of all single-parent households were single-father homes. In the US in 2013, 8% of all single-parent homes were single-father homes, and that's up from 2% in 2000. In 2011, a Norms and Values report commissioned by the Ministry of Social Development stated that 25% of single-parent homes in Trinidad and Tobago were single-father homes. This issue, therefore, of whether being a single father is beset by more challenges than being a single mother in Trinidad and Tobago is a relevant and important one. Some view single fathers as not generally being afforded equal treatment, while others demand informed empirical bases for such conclusions. It is in this context that the committee set about to do the following, and I would read now what you would be familiar with, which would be the objectives of this inquiry. 1, to understand the unique challenges faced by male single parents in Trinidad and Tobago. 2, to examine the quality of policies that exist with respect to single fathers. 3, to determine whether the programs and services offered to single parents adequately meet the needs of single fathers. And 4, to evaluate current legislation that may impact on the custodial rights of single fathers in Trinidad and Tobago. The committee would have received 13 written submissions from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, the Office of the Prime Minister, Gender and Child Affairs, Office of the Chief Personnel Officer, or the CPO, the Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, the Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprise Development, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Family Development and Child Research Center of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus, the Judiciary, and through the public call for written submissions, 3 submissions were received. We want to thank all persons and institutions that would have submitted their written submissions for our perusal. During this public hearing, viewers and listeners can send the committee questions related to today's topic via email on parl101@ttparliament.org, on our Facebook page at TT Parliament, and on Twitter at TT Parliament. At this time, I would like to invite brief opening remarks from the delegations that are here. Mr. Asif Ali, the Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Mr. Ian Ramdahin, the Permanent Secretary, Acting of the Office of Prime Minister, Gender and Child Affairs, and Mr. Rondell Fields, President of the Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. So Mr. Ali, Mr. Ramdahin, and Mr. Fields in that order. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services is charged with the responsibility of coordinating and implementing the objectives of the government for the social sector, which are to protect and empower the elderly, persons with disabilities, the socially displaced, the poor, and the family, which we see as a cornerstone of the community, and by extension, society. As a lead social sector ministry, we are pleased to contribute to today's discussions. Madam Chair, one of the main objectives of our ministry is the fostering of strong, functional families, which we consider to be of critical importance given some of the several challenges that we currently face. These would include poor parenting skills, insufficient and ineffective communication within the family, poor methods of discipline, poor socialization skills, the influence of the media, both conventional and social, and changes in the community and the society at large. Our ministry, through its National Family Services Division, provides several programs and services that treat with these issues confronting the family. These services include general counseling services, co-parenting counseling services, advocacy services, advice, community parenting workshops, community parent support groups, a radio program, it's Family Time Let's Talk, and training for lay responders to domestic violence. The ministry remains committed to the provision of a relevant suite of social products and services to all families in Trinidad and Tobago. These include programs which support and sustain families in meeting their basic needs for educational opportunities, food security, income support, and other general assistance to improve their quality of life. The ministry recognizes the need to improve its social service delivery processes, as well as to improve our client service experience. In this regard, we have embarked on an integrated approach to addressing our program efficiency and effectiveness, as well as focusing on poverty prevention and early recovery. This shift will promote not only independence, but rather as opposed to maintenance, which offers no assistance in lifting persons out of poverty. A robust collaborative network with our social sector partner ministries and other civil society groups is a key success factor to ensure that families receive the maximum benefit from our programs and the programs of other divisions within the social sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the committee for giving the Gender and Child Affairs Division of the Prime Minister the opportunity to be here today. Just to look at the context in which our ministry is basically approaching gender-related matters, we basically look at gender, both male and female. We basically focus on the policy and the programs, right? And looking at the context of how gender would have evolved over the years, in 1980s, it was just a desk, right? It became a gender affairs division in the early 90s, and a gender affairs, well, gender, youth, and child development ministry in 2011. And right now, we are the Office of the Prime Minister in terms of recognizing the significant impact of gender on civil society, right? To date, our ministry, in recognizing male matters relating to the gender, the males, we basically have increased our institutional capacity. Basically, in terms of staffing, we right now, in terms of September 2011, we have a male coordinator who is assisted by an assistant. 2 persons at that particular portfolio is managing male-related matters. We have set up a registry in April 2016 to deal with domestic violence. Being the ministry responsible for policy, we basically recognize policy can't be moved without data. In terms of ground truthing, find out what are the issues affecting the males in society. And it's our intent to basically take this registry and expand it to cover all issues relating to male-related matters, as well as female. Okay. So we have made progress to date in terms of we have submitted a gender policy, it is before Cabinet, as well as the National Strategic Action Plan, which is also before Cabinet related to violence, gender-related violence. So our ministry has put specific focus on matters relating to the male gender, and we hope to basically contribute towards resolving any issues related to the single father, as well as clarify any matters that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Field?
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I must say, a heartfelt thanks to the Joint Select Committee on behalf of the Single Fathers Association and by extension, every father in Trinidad and Tobago. It's been a while we've been clamoring to meet with the parliamentarians. It's been a while you've seen us in a number of community projects. We've had a lot of consultations with many of the organizations there. Many of them have partnered with us as well. Our main intent is to provide the best type of parenting possible that we could provide for our children, to have more access to our children. And actually, something I think people overlook, many of us fathers today were the sons of yesterday that didn't have fathers. That is why we understand the importance and the relevance of being involved in our children's life. At times people, I think sometimes people misinterpret our truest agenda and may think that we don't have the child's best interest at heart, but we do. We understand the importance of fathers and mothers working together, at times putting their intimate relationships apart so that they can form the proper parental partnership so that we can parent our children properly. This is exactly what our children demand for us. We see it in the field at Single Fathers Association Outreach, where we don't only assist single fathers, we reach out to grandparents, reach out to single mothers, reach out to us as well. There's also the element of mothers that reach out to us to have fathers involved and encourage proactivity of fathers being involved in their lives as well. Taking a new approach, not the deadbeat dad approach, but the approach of showing good parenting fathers, enjoying parenting so that we will motivate those fathers who may not be interested to come and be interested in parenting, because it's a blessing to all of us. So once again, we must thank everyone here for seeing that this is a very important issue to be discussed. And as we highlight the issues here, we hope that we have a very positive resolution at the end of everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. At this time, we will begin the questioning phase of our public hearing. And I'd like to remind our committee members as well as members of the delegations to direct any questions and concerns through the chair. And I would just like to start off the questioning, if I may. And this question is directed to each of the organizations here with us. When looking at some of the information that is available online and so on, I realized at that time that there were a number of definitions of single father. And I would like to ask each of the institutions here, what is your definition of a single father? You can start. Anyone can start.
Hi, good morning again. A single father is a male who has the responsibility for taking care of a child or children. A single father could be a biological father or adopted father or a foster in terms of having an informal arrangement to take care of a child. So basically it's a male who has the parenting responsibility of a minor in a general sense.
Anyone else?
Just to add on a little bit, I mean, Ms. Puransing is totally accurate in that perspective. Also, another perspective, many people believe that you cannot be a single father if you do not have custody of your child. That is something that we want to put out there, that you are a single father still. I mean, if you look at the definition, when you, Google and different searches, you don't have to have custody of the child to be a single father. The relationship between the child and the father, once you take care of the child, once you have the responsibility of taking care of the child, or you're at least making an attempt to have that responsibility fulfilled, you are indeed a single parent, a single father.
From the Gender and Child Affairs Division, we recognize the definition of single father is an issue, because if you don't define it correctly, you may exclude someone into the policy program. So it is an area to be addressed in this deliberation.
So, and the reason why I ask this is because traditionally, I think the first impression one would get is the definition given by the Ministry of Social Development, where it is somebody with the custodial rights for the child. The Single Fathers Association, however, has widened it to anyone, any father who is not living with the child, regardless if you have custodial rights for the child. And that dichotomy, is it addressed in the gender policy in any way that is before the Cabinet at this time?
I would like to ask Ms. Martin to assist with answering this question.
The term single, please excuse me, I have the cold badly, so my voice might be cracking a little bit, so please excuse that. The term single father is not addressed in the gender policy, because the gender policy look holistically at male, female, boys, girls in a holistic manner. So the term single father was not highlighted in the policy.
Perchance in the parenting policy, is it mentioned?
In the parenting policy, it is addressed, and there are measures in the policy to address the shortfalls that a single father would have in terms of having more access to relevant services. And in terms of health facilities, it's in the policy too that, well, not necessarily a single father, but young parents are given more information when they do become a parent, in terms of information that is required in helping them in their new role as a parent. So it's not really very specific to being a single father, but being parents.
Recognizing that, as was mentioned by Mr. Ramnahin, that the difference in definition would lead to differences in the challenges that can be identified. Is there any revision of the definitions that go forward in the parenting policy? Has the Single Fathers Association have any input in clarifying what this definition really is, and therefore what are the specific challenges that face single fathers?
Chair, the parenting policy that you refer to, it's a draft policy at this point. The ministry is currently planning for public consultation with a view to finalizing that policy. And definitely we will be seeking the input of all agencies and groups, including the Single Fathers Association, in refining that policy. So to answer your question, it's still a draft policy, and we will take that under advisement.
Thanks so much. Mr. Ford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right. we hear the term single fathers, but I think we do not hear much of the term single mothers. All right? What is the difference? What are the disparities between a single father and a single mother? All right? We hear these single fathers talking about not having equal responsibility, not having jurisdiction, restrictions, custody issues, and things like that. But we hardly hear of single mothers talking about these concerns, talking about these issues. Why? What are the differences? Any one of the relevant departments, divisions.
I would like to respond or start off, Madam Chair. The difference is that there's an unwritten rule in the magistracy and the judiciary and in general in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago that a child's place is with his or her mother. And as a result, single fathers tend to be the people or the parent who is alienated from participating in parenting the child. He is the one who is found or finds himself in front of the court with maintenance issues and different things like that and accountability. And so you would seldom hear about single mothers ending up in that position because the general behavior towards the situation is that the child's place is with the mother.
And according to the Single Fathers Association, you all are trying to change that. You all are trying to enhance the whole, get betterment, for want of a better word. What's the whole purpose then?
Well, firstly, I want to touch on something you spoke on before. I think people would agree with me when we say that single mother, that term single mother is something used a lot more than single father. We actually kind of split it off of the single father, if you're the single mother, and I have my parental rights and I am a good father, I'm taking care of my child, then I have to be a single father as well. So, I mean, I think the single mother is something that is heard of a lot in many circles throughout the world, not only in Trinidad and Tobago. And as I said, we mentioned before, it's about co-parenting. It's about us understanding the relevance and importance of fathers being involved in their children's lives. Many of us, as I said, were sons that didn't have fathers. So we understood the things that we lacked by them not being there. And at the end of the day, sometimes it was a court order that stood in their way. And then we understand now that we are the generation that must not allow this to go on to the generation after us. Many of us have sons as well. So at the end of the day, we understand and we appreciate the mother's input, and we believe that the input from the father was primarily focusing on monetary contribution, when we have a lot more than that to offer. We nurture our children, we take care of our children, we have fathers who have raised children by themselves, and no notice or no kudos have been given to them for this. So it is one of our duties to highlight the capability of fathers being able to be good nurturers and good parents in our society of Trinidad and Tobago.
If I may, is there any evidence that has been collected by either the association or that's available in the public that suggests that the court is biased towards mothers? Has there been any collection of evidence at all that suggests that this is true? Because there's a counter view that the males do not put themselves forward for custody, and that, again, is anecdotal at this point, unless there's some data that suggests that one or the other is true. Has the Single Fathers Association or any of the other bodies been able to collect data that would suggest that the court has been granting the females custody in preference to the male?
Yes, I think we would have sent you all a copy of a study, a research that was done. It was actually sponsored at the project that was sponsored by the European Union in partnership with the Emancipation Support Committee, where we had Attorney Tiffany Hercules. She had done research on the family court system, and she took cases and analyzed them. So you guys are supposed to have that. And the finding at the end was when you're dealing with general orders, she made mention of selecting the cases where there were no sexual abuse or no violence, no form of abuse by either parent, both on equal footing, mother and father come into custody for the court, and the findings were generally 74% were custody was ordered to the mother, 21% care, and this is care and control we're talking about, right? Because you know there's a difference between custody and care and control, right? So talking about care and control is who will have the child live with them and take care of the child from day to day. So 21% of the times it was granted to fathers, 74% it was granted to mothers, and 5% there was shared care and control between both parties.
So I looked at the study, and I was really trying to find out who would have commissioned, who did it, because I saw it was a U grant and the Emancipation Support Committee was involved. So 50 cases. Over what time span were those cases?
I think the span was from 1996. And if I am to identify another challenge that you have as well, I know there are a lot of pronouncements, but many of the judgments she identified were not written. So there weren't many, I mean, to go with, because the judges didn't write out the orders particularly, so she had to go based with what was made available, and also the ones that did not involve any form of abuse, so that both parties could be on a level footing when they appeared to the court, so the statistic could give a good reflection of what happens in the case.
And the sample of 50,
right.
Was there any indication of that was 50 out of what was the total amount of cases that could have been considered?
Well, yes.
Would that have been considered a representative sample?
Come again?
Would the 50 have been considered a representative sample?
She would have selected as many, I mean, this is information I think we'd have gathered from her, she would have selected as many as she could that was not compromised in any way toward any particular party. Whatever it was abuse or some other thing that was in play, she would have selected those cases where both parties were on equal footing. As I said, there's not many. I think, I'm just saying off the top of my head, I think when we were looking at it before even the study, one of the issues they were having, I think from 1996 to date, I think it was just about 100 cases that were documented or so, not many, about 75 to 100. So that itself was a challenge as well. Also, with the magisterial court, what we decided to do is have some forms and fill out the information, because a lot of the orders are not written out there as well. So there's no database to get it from the magisterial court to have an idea, which most of the cases actually are in that level as well. There's no way to really have a record of what has already been, there's no database ready held for them to go like how the family court has the library that the lawyer could have gone there. So those are things that I think would have been challenges as well.
So do you believe, or is there any evidence, is there any evidence, sister, that would give you an idea of, in cases where there's the children, the welfare of the children and the custody of the children to be considered, how many fathers would have applied for custody as opposed to mothers? Is there any evidence that, any data that can be gleaned to?
It's in the same document, because these were fathers and mothers that applied for custody, care and control. So. Right,
but that would be of the written judgment she would have been able to find. So basically, there have been a number of custody cases. Right. Some of those were not documented. Most of them would not have been written judgments, and so you couldn't use those. Right. What I'm trying to get a sense of is, in most cases, do the fathers actually apply for custody?
In many cases, fathers would apply for custody.
But is there any, do we have data, we collect data that would suggest how many, what is the ratio? Because obviously, it would only be in the cases where fathers do apply that you can see whether or not there's a bias. Right. But what I'm asking is a broader question. What is the percentage of fathers that actually apply?
What I would like, what I would like to touch on that as well, though, even if a father doesn't apply, the judge or the magistrate has the power, to do what is in the best interest of the child. So that even though they are to see, even if the father is to apply for access, and the mother is the one that's applied for custody, so to speak, but in the determination of the magistrate or the judge, the child's interest is best at heart, or being best placed with the father. Based on the assessment of the judge or magistrate or the evidence brought forward, the judge can also make a custodial ruling that the father have custody as well. So I do get your point, and as I said, this is the information that we have from the information that was available. We have also at the magisterial court, we have done some information, some research. That part isn't completed as yet because we have to go person to person for them to fill out these forms. Do you have custody? Did you apply for access? So we are in the process of doing that part. And before the project ends in May 2018, we should have some information from the magisterial part of things as well, because we understand many of the matters don't get to family court because some people just don't have the money to end up in family court.
So then maybe I would submit that there is room for a lot more data collection to take place to be able to prove positions, or at least to inform positions that we can say, make certain generalizations, and that really has to do with our data collection and how, because we did ask for some of this type of data, but what we were told is that it's not collected in the way that we were asking. To be able to identify these issues, are the fathers applying in many cases for custody, and of those that apply for custody, how many of them are granted, and so on, for us to be able to really inform these discussions properly. I think there's room for more data collection, and I know the association is doing their part to get some of this research and get some of this data in. I don't know if any of the other institutions can say if they are aware of any other bodies doing any data collection in this type of way to inform positions and to look at gaps and to look at patterns. Anybody else is aware of any data collection happening?
Madam Chair, that was one of the probing questions we also had when we started to analyze the data collection, because to formulate policy, you have to start by ground truthing and collecting the data. And the Ministry has already started with our National Registry on the gender-based violence. We hope to expand this to capture data and all other aspects relating to gender-related matters. And when we look at the file with the single fathers, we would have basically contributed in terms of grant funding, but there is no information with issues. If we have an issue log of all issues affecting the single fathers, right, we could basically use that in our policy formulation, and from the policy formulation, we could also recommend law reform, right? So this is an area we need to work on, and I would like to recommend that.
I chair, from our perspective at the Ministry, our main division, Social Welfare Division, that treats with the issue of grants to whether they be single fathers or parents and the whole applicants, they're paper-based, so it is very difficult for us to extract that data from our records. We are working on a management information system, an IT system, an IT platform that would speak to electronic case management. So once that is implemented, it will be a lot easier for us to extract data of that type to inform those policy decisions.
Thank you, Minister Hussain.
Madam Chair, if I may.
I'm sorry.
No problem. I just wanted to add that the Children's Authority also collects data, but the children that come to our attention are children that are at risk of being abused or neglected, specifically, not necessary to do with custodial matters. We don't necessarily get involved unless the court asks us to get involved. We have information on whether a child may be removed from the mother and placed with the father or vice versa, but we don't analyze the data by that particular category, but we do have information on our records. Just wanted to share that.
Thanks so much, Minister Hussain.
I would like to compliment the Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, because I see you all as role models. I have known Mr. Fabian for a long while, and everybody know him as Uncle Errol. He always have a lot of children around him. So I want to compliment you all for the role you are playing. I have one question, and the question is, has the Single Fathers Association made any prior representation to have legislative amendments? And if so, to which state agency, and what was the response?
What I'd say, we had conversation with the Ministry of Social Development pertaining to public assistance, where we had single fathers who approached the different welfare offices and were turned away. One case in point, we have Mr. Marlon Lewis. He was one of the single fathers. His wife had died, leaving him with 7 children. And he was told that he had only a single mother would be able to apply for this for public assistance. We also have Jonathan Price. He approached the Barataria social welfare as well and was told something very similar. I approached Mr. Ganga Prasad, where he looked at the we were looking at the legislation together more so to see where the issue was, if there was an issue. Our lawyers looked at it. They didn't see anywhere that said specifically that a single father, particularly children living with a single father, should not be publicly assisted. But I think it's possibly an interpretative problem, an interpretation problem or issue. And I think the best people to clarify that would actually be the Ministry of Social Development.
If we could segue now, just to get some information on that, is that a policy of the Ministry of Social Development?
Sure. Chair, I would like my Deputy Director of Social Welfare to maybe field that question. He's better able to answer that.
Good morning again, Madam Chair. As Mr. Fields indicated, in his persons he would have interacted with, Mr. Gangprasad in particular, in accordance with the Act does not, in fact, speak to gender bias in general. There's one minor section as it relates to the Public Assistance Act. But what I believe, and this might very well be just by way of opinion, it relates to a statement that was made earlier. Traditionally, the male has always been deemed as the head of household. And what I believe would have happened over the years, even though there was adjustment to the legislature, there was no real changes in the practices and procedures that came with it. So in fact, we have now embarked on a sensitization drive to look at the Act in accordance with the staffing of the Social Welfare Department to bring around a culture change. I believe it is linked to the more or less practice, and while we have moved forward and the Act would have been amended, right, the traditions that were involved in how public assistance would have been administered remain by and large the same. What would have also probably added to the slow process of change, again, the same culture change, because what we have observed, and again, we don't have any data per se to back this at, right, at this point in time, but it's really a minimum of males of themselves would have come seeking assistance. Most males just in themselves would have, by way of tradition, right, accept the position of being head, whether they were there to assist or in the parenting of the child or not. So it probably would have been more of this exceptional case where a male would have come forth seeking public assistance, and as such, if such a person was told you don't qualify because the male is deemed the head of household, right? I think in most instances, most persons walked away accepting that to be a fact. Thank you.
Mr. Ford?
Okay, I heard your considerations, right? Only this morning we would have had a presentation from UNICEF, right? And one of the key considerations that they have identified also it with regards to grants, necessary grants in terms of allocation, in something that need to be looked forward with regards to the legislation, all right? So to the Ministry of Social Development, the submission indicated that gender equality advocates will be included in the consultations on your national draft policy, right? The document that you all would have presented to us, right? What is the expected date of the consultations, right? Based on what the public servant now mentioned, right? Are those considerations for legislative review are being considered in the national draft presentation that you all are having, right? Points like those in terms of the inequality between single fathers and single mothers when they go to the social welfare office, and who are the gender equality advocates to be included, and have they been contacted in going forward for you all to have these consultations?
Thank you. So let me answer part of that question. In terms of when will the consultations commence, we hope to commence those consultations during the month of February. You asked
2018.
2018, yes. Right. Remember, you spoke about the issue of whether it will inform our legislative changes. Yes, to the extent that during the consultations, if issues arise that require amendment to the legislation, that will form part of our overall legislative review. So yes, it would inform that. Your third question spoke to the issue of the gender affairs advocates. Maybe I'll let Ms. Buransing maybe answer that part of it.
A definite determination of the list of the NGOs have not been done as yet, but it will include not just Single Fathers Association, other similar groups. It will also include women groups and other NGOs that actually do work with children and parents. So you have Families in Action, you have the Parent in TT, you have the Rape Crisis, you have other groups that not just deal specifically with one group of, one gender, but deal with the family. So it will be broad. It would not be gender specific.
Okay. Now, keeping in mind what your PS mentioned, Ms. Buransing,
yes.
February 25th, 2018,
yes.
Right, today being the 12th, we are going into the carnival season in terms of a timeline, in terms of dates and so on. I hope that you all are keeping that into consideration to ensure that when you send out these invitations, the responses will be positive in order to attend. Definitely, I'm sure the single fathers will attend, but in terms of getting the other NGOs and the other groupings involved. And I think this is where, from where I sit, you know, it's one of the prerequisites that we need to improve in our system of operation in terms of going forward. Because the UNICEF group have identified some key considerations. It's probably a document that the Parliament can pass on to you all with regards to, like, for example, expanding parental leave to include paternity leave, right? We know that has been an issue for many years. I was once employed at the National Insurance Board, and I know that was an issue since in the 1980s, right? National parenting policies and programs which address single fathers and mothers in particular, social protection policies and mechanisms, grants for single parent households, right? Because again, as an MP, constituents come to the office, again, male single parents, and when you refer them to the social welfare division, they usually return negative response. When the mothers go, positive response. And again, as your public servant at the rear of you would have mentioned, the legislation is there, the interpretation, and I think this is something that we definitely need to get on the front burner in order to get into the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah.
I want to ask this question to the Single Fathers Association. It's about 2 or 3 questions, but I'll ask them in sequence. Are the challenges that are faced by custodial single fathers, right? So those who have custody for their children, are those challenges different from the challenges that are faced by custodial single mothers?
Morning again, Madam Chair. To answer that question, the challenges faced by single fathers with custody, care, and control are similar in nature in some sense to those of single mothers. However, based on some of the prior discussions here, we have a unique set of challenges that single fathers face. I myself, as I said before, have been a single father for the past 21 years, and a single father in the truest sense because I single-handedly, without any assistance from any female or anyone else, department, organization, anyone else, took care of my 3 children. And we face challenges in terms of having to be able to access care for our children, whereas a single mother may readily get support from family and friends and even members within the society who are sensitive to her being a single mother. Single fathers are not looked upon like that. We face challenges with respect to that. One of the other challenges we face, again, as discussed before, being able to access goods and services from government institutions that are provided for single mother household, but we can't access it as single fathers?
Now, we spoke about the social services grants, and we spoke about it being a matter of interpretation, not necessarily a matter of policy. Are there any particular laws or legislation or policies that exist in government agencies that discriminate between custodial single fathers and custodial single mothers? Because what I'm trying to get at is this. Are the problems faced by single fathers, when you say single fathers, is it a problem of single fathers who are not custodial single fathers? And is that the real issue, that those single fathers who don't have custody of their children face difficulties within the legislative system and the policies in dealing with their children who are living with their mothers? Or is it really a problem where custodial single fathers are discriminated against based on legislation and policy with respect to single custodial mothers?
What we have discovered by looking into the documents and the policies and so forth is that it is not so much the legislation or the policies, but it is more the application, the interpretation and the application. And what we have found is that the actual bias exists at the level of the individuals who are charged with the responsibility of administrating these policies.
So is it more of a cultural issue?
I will ask Mr. Fields to elaborate on that.
Yes, I would say culture has played a massive part on it. But another challenge I would like to identify that custodial fathers face, particularly, it may not be, definitely, custodial fathers face, particularly when they are custodial parents of daughters, a number of false allegations normally levied against them of sexual assault, which are many times proven after an investigation that it was fabricated. The Children Authority, they would know of some of the cases that we brought to light as well. They worked in getting some of the children back to the fathers as well. That is a key issue because particularly we had a case with Mr. Andrew Gross where allegations was made against him and the children were taken away from him for an extensive amount of time because of him having custody of the child and the allegation being levied against him. Once, obviously, an allegation like that is made and there's a daughter involved, automatically the Children Authority are called upon to act. The Child Protection Unit will act. That is their duty to do so. But the damage sometimes, and this is something that he has expressed, even though he has been given back custody and other fathers who have gone through this, they never really repair that damage. Even though they have been proven innocent, the label that society has labeled them already as if they have molested someone they are supposed to protect, it stays forever. There's no redress. There's no punishment for this fabrication, this false allegation levied against them. It is something that really needs to be looked in because it is a pattern. I've seen it with at least 3 or 4 cases of fathers who have had custody, who have won custody of their children, and then later on the mother reopens the case and an allegation is made against them.
Madam Chair, I would like to elaborate on that because I personally experienced that that sort of bias within the system. Prior to the existence of the Children's Authority or the Child Protection Unit or any of these agencies, I am the father of 2 daughters who are now 25 and 26 years old. And when those children were, I've been single parenting them when the eldest was actually 6 years old. And about 3 years into being a single parent, single father, the police showed up at my door and grabbed these 2 girls with a false allegation like that, labeled against me. Took them to a medical institution where a male doctor violated them by insertion of his finger in order to examine whether the allegations were true or not. And the individual in question, and this is not an isolated case, many single fathers today that we have come in contact with are facing these sorts of allegations. This is one of the challenges that single fathers face, domestic violence and sexual impropriety. As long as those two are labeled before single fathers at the court, custody of our children is immediately removed from the single father and given to the mother. It is one of the key weapons that women are using before the judiciary today. And if you look at how the Domestic Violence Act is structured, you will find that as long as such an application is made for a protection order, the protection order has to be given. And it is given with the statement pending investigation. However, in what we have experienced before the judiciary is that the man then has to prove his innocence, which is a very difficult thing, because when we appear before the court, the assumption is that we are guilty. So we are starting off at a disadvantage. So in my case, what happened is the police grabbed my children, took them to the medical center, the doctor inserted his finger, and mind you, he did that with the two girls, and he also checked the boy's anus to see if the boy was being molested as well, right? That is 3 years after the mother left. And what this woman had done was journey all the way from North Trinidad, where she was living, to South Trinidad, Barrackport to be exact, with a blanket soaked in blood, and gave it to the police. The police acted on this allegation and did what they did, examined the children and so forth, found nothing wrong, returned the children to my care at the time, and sent the blanket for forensic analysis, only to discover that it was goat's blood in the blanket. Absolutely nothing was done by way of calling her to task for the false allegation. I just continued to parent my children, and I paid hundreds and thousands of dollars in a counseling cost to make sure that the damage was minimized, right? This is what's one of the biggest challenges that single fathers are facing today, allegations, false allegations.
Madam Chair, if I may, just shortly, I'd like to call the Joint Select Committee and the members here to really take that into serious consideration, because it's something that we've been seeing happening very often, and the damage on the children. Some of these children, many girls, they are removed from the home. Some of them were excelling in school. We have evidence. A particular case that is before the court, I will not mention it. Some of them were excelling in school. They were removed for 2 and 3 years, put in homes, moved around the entire place, not allowed to do SCA. We are destroying our children if we are not really dealing with this issue. So that's just my personal piece on that we take a very firm approach on these things, especially the sensitivity that there are children that are really being abused. So we must not allow people who make false allegations to make it harder to find these people who committing this abuse against children.
Again, I empathize with the concerns voiced by the single parent, Mr. Grant and Mr. Fields. Ms. Noel, with regards to the Children's Authority now, we received submissions from the Judiciary, and they are not here, right? They apologize for they being unable to attend today. So I don't know if the director from the Children's Authority might be able to assist along those lines. Added to what the single parents would have said, right? The judiciary mentioned that the first and paramount consideration in custody cases, and that it best promotes the welfare of the child, determines which parent is awarded custody or whether there should be an order for joint custody. And then they also mention again in their submission, the courts are guided by legislation and its interpretation, and the legislation with regard to child custody and maintenance is gender neutral. It recognizes that both parents have the same rights to custody, and one parent does not enjoy a greater right than the other. And this is where the concern or the question arises. Whether domestic violence can be traced to inequality and bias shown towards mothers, or where custody and access is denied to the father of the child.
Let us just say perceived inequality, at this point, since we have not.
Thanks for the correction, Madam Chairman. Right, perceived. Right, so I don't know if Ms. Noel could shed any light on that in terms of the biasness as mentioned from the single fathers. Now, we don't have single mothers here in order to rebut what probably the single fathers are saying. And as the director of the Trends Authority, if you could shed any light along those lines in the absence of the judiciary. Not saying that you are unsane for the judiciary.
Yes, and certainly I may come short because again, the Children's Authority does not participate in the majority of the custody matters because they are private matters. Only when the judge or the magistrate believes that the child may be in need of care and protection, then they may ask the Children's Authority to then participate. So we will not have a lot of that information. But what I can say is based on the cases that are reported to the Children's Authority for whatever reason, be it for child abuse specifically on a domestic violence matter, both parents are evaluated equally, and they must, because both are very important to the child's development. So if it is in our investigation we find that the mother may not be in the best interest of the child, we will place the child with the father, if it is the father is able and fit and willing to care for the child. That's what we do. So there is no discrimination or disadvantage to fathers within the work of the Children's Authority. What happened in the judiciary, I will not be able to speak to that at all.
So that's a follow-up, right? So there's no bias as the case may be. So therefore, the judiciary makes a ruling, sends the information to the Trends Authority. You then in turn carry out what the court order entails? Or is it that now you have to do a separate investigation, or you just proceed with what the court order says?
No, so if it is the judiciary brings the matter to the Children's Authority's attention, most time it is to ask our advice or recommendation. So any orders that may have been made might have been an interim order, and there will be one feedback from the Children's Authority before making a final order. So there are cases where the court may make an order for the child to be removed from the father or the mother, and the Children's Authority will then have to carry out that act and then do its investigation, and based on its findings, submit the report to the judiciary. And we have seen all sorts of things happen where a child may have been wrongfully removed from a father based on an allegation, and when we investigate, the allegation was false. The child was returned. And we may find sometimes the allegation is in fact true, and then the child doesn't return to the father. So it really depends on the merits of each case. And when the judiciary asks for the Children's Authority's input, it is to guide their decision making. It's really to give them information, recommendation, and advice. And
subject to the approval of the chairman, in terms of the present scenario that is in the public domain with regards to the present young man, and that's with the Children's Authority. I don't subject, could any light be shed on that, or Madam Chair? Or is it sub judice?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, sorry.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
If I may continue, Madam Chair, with regards to challenges, one of the other challenges that single fathers face as well, when we do not have custody, care, or control, we may have access, and we have been given access, even in cases where fathers have joint custody. When it comes to the education of the child, even though the court makes a ruling that we are to be consulted with regards to matters regarding education, healthcare, and removal from the jurisdiction, it's not happening.
So this is referring now to that issue where you may not have custody of the child, but you are supposed to have an input into their care and control. And what you're saying is that sometimes the mothers default on this.
Yes. And we have no redress where that is concerned. I have cases that I've dealt with. We have members, one of them present in the public gallery this morning, who has been battling for his child for the last 14 years. And even though he was given joint custody, he has whenever, for example, he went to the school when the child was being registered, and they're sitting in a meeting like this together with the mother, the principal, and teachers and representatives of the school, was a Muslim thug that was brought there to intimidate him. We have a situation where he went to the Ministry of Education to get information as to what school his child had passed for, because the mother refused to give him that information. And one of the challenges we face with the Ministry of Education is that who registered the child is the question that was asked, or that is being asked. And if the mother registered the child, the father cannot get any information concerning the child, even though he has joint custody of the child. All right?
Has the association made any formal complaints to the Judiciary or the Law Association or the Law Association with respect to some of these very serious concerns that are being raised with respect to the custodial single mothers not adhering to the court rulings?
Madam Chair, it has been for the last 5 years. We've tried to reach out to the judiciary in a number of ways. Personally visiting, we've lobbied them, we've sent letters for meetings, a number of ways. We've held consultations. Every single representative here has participated in our yearly consultation, Fatherhood and Society Issues and Solutions. Children Authority, all the other stakeholders here. Every single year as today, the judiciary has never been here. They're not even here today. So we have not been able to truly make proper representation to them because they have never made themselves available to us.
Do you have communicated with them by way of letter?
By way of letter.
Indicating issues or,
exactly.
or examples?
Yes. And sometimes no response even. Sometimes a response to come in. I met with the manager of the family court. We were supposed to structure a meeting. We were never recontacted again.
If I may continue, relative to what Mr. Ford had said concerning the judiciary, I always say it's all nice and lovely on that paper that you read from, sir, where the laws are concerned and that fathers and mothers are on equal footing before the court and nobody is more important than the other and everybody has equal rights and so forth. That is only on paper. The actual process, the actual practice of the court is not what we the fathers experience. I have reports from fathers who have said, the magistrate said, sit down here and hush your mouth. I don't want to hear what you have to say, right? We have report from fathers who have said the magistrate, when they applied for custody, they having actual possession of the child, the magistrates turned to the mother and asked, ma'am, do you want your child? And the mother says yes, and the magistrates write an order for custody, care and control and takes away the child from the father. This is the type of cases that we are being confronted with at the Single Fathers Association. So when we hear about how equal single fathers and single mothers are, I mean, it's actually hilarious. I mean, if we could actually eat that paper that those things are written on, we might get more benefit from it than what we receive before the court.
Can I?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Minister Hussain.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Section 21 of the Births and Deaths Registration Act creates the opportunity for a father not to be included on the child's birth certificate. Does this give the father a legal opportunity to challenge for parental rights?
Well, the father would have to prove paternity of the child. He'll be brought, and we're dealing with that as a very relevant topic as well, because you would have heard us lobby also for paternity testing to be made mandatory before application for a maintenance order. Because one of the issues I think we have, one of the ways to presume fatherhood is by admission, something they deem admission. But how can I really admit to something that I'm not truly aware of? The only true way now in a world we live in with technology is DNA testing. will confirm that you are the father of a child. But admission, as well as you being married as well, is another presumption, which poses another challenge in instances where, because we're looking at all sides here, instances where possibly we've had cases where the mother there may be some infidelity, and there was an extramarital relationship, and that father is the father that wants to be involved in the child's life. And the mother may have gotten pregnant, but because she's married, the husband is presumed the father. And the real father, he would have no claim, you'd have no say, or would be able to be father of the child because of that presumption based on marriage.
That's the law.
Let me clarify. That is the law. So if
Yeah.
there's an extramarital relationship
Right.
that results in a child,
Right.
the father of that child is not recognized, the biological father
Right.
is not recognized as the father of the child.
Not until he proves paternity. If he is to prove paternity, then obviously, then he will be proven. But out of the gates, it is presumption that the husband automatically must be the father.
And let me tie this in because I saw it in your submission and I wondered and I wanted to clarify. Maintenance payments,
Right.
are those in fact payable without proof of paternity?
Yeah. But what they do, of course, that is what they call admission. So a problem that we face, or men face, is that you call before the magistrate, and the first thing that they would ask you, are you the father? And you would say yes, because you know yourself to be the father of the child. But I can tell you today, I have represented many men that when we did the test, they were never the father. So this is why we are calling, and some warrants have been brought for their arrest. We had to, Malon Thompson's case, we had to go to the High Court to get a warrant quashed, or he'd have faced imprisonment for a child that he'd paid maintenance for nearly 8 years that was proven not to be his child.
But then he would have admitted in court that the child was his.
But this is exactly why I made the first point. How can you admit to something that you do not know? I can't say that I am the father for certain unless it's been tested. So that's the only way.
Well, then why would the person have admitted?
Because in the best thoughts in your heart, you believe you are the father. You may think you are the father, but you believe in the father. We as men, believing we are the father, doesn't guarantee that we are the father of our children biologically. That is the truth.
Is that a legislative failing? Because it was noted as one of the things that should be amended in the legislature. But is that a legislative failing, or is it something that men need to be aware of, that if you are being called to provide maintenance, you should first prove, right, no,
the reason why we said it should be mandatory, you see, it has to deal with the same culture we're talking about as well. Many a time, a man will never say, and any father is a good father will not say that is not my child. If you ask him, he will not say that is. He shouldn't be put, I believe, in that position to say, is that your child, when he really doesn't know. So I believe the response you would get from any man in any room who's known his children is that is my children.
And why would that change 8 years down the road?
No, it wouldn't. But I mean, if at the end of the day he decides, not that it's changing, but he decides to do a paternity test to verify at that point, for whatever reason, if there's some disagreement, or if he found out something later down the road that she may have been unfaithful, and now he decides at that point in time to do a paternity test, and it comes back valid that the child isn't his. These are the ways that these things are happening. And then it may sound unimportant, but now you're talking about a man has invested in the child, not even monetarily. One of the greatest problems is the child and the man develop such a close bond, and many of the fathers continue to father the children as their own. But they now know this at that point in time, at that stage, and it's wrecked their lives.
Madam Chair, I wish to simplify this a bit. According to the practice of the judiciary, as long as a woman goes before the court and makes an application for maintenance, and there is a hearing, she is not likely to leave that courtroom on that day of that first hearing without an interim order for maintenance. Whether it is proven that the child is the man's child or not, the man is made to pay maintenance forthwith via an interim order. The interim order facilitates the investigation of the court. Many times the investigation does not require a paternity test. But it is the presumption of the court in practice that because the woman has come before the court and identified John as the father of the child, John is made to pay maintenance.
So then I'll ask the question again, because it seems as though the answer would be different. Is it a practice of the court then in Trinidad and Tobago to require maintenance to be paid without paternity being established?
Yes.
It is a practice of the court.
It is the practice of the court.
Without admission of the man?
No, the man must admit. He must admit that he is father of the child, right? So the thing is, there must be admission for a presumption of fatherhood. There must also, or the other presumption of fatherhood is marriage, as I stated before. But I'm saying that now, since we've advanced in technology over this amount of time, and paternity can be proven with certainty, it is a very unfair position, an inequitable position, to ask a man to admit that he's a biological father of the child when it can be proven if he's a biological father of the child. The mother of the bat we know because she bears the child. But the father, in light of recent developments, we're not a whole society back in the 1950s, I mean, we 21st century, we can prove paternity instead of admit to something you're not totally aware of as well. So I think, and that is it, it's the culture of the court as well and the fear of many men, that if you say that child or question the paternity of that child and it come back and is your child, you will get dealt with. That is the fear, telling you, just as it is colloquially.
Is that fear based on fact?
Well, of course. I mean, sometimes there's just a mannerism. When we enter court, I'll give you a short story that my mom told me when she went to court with my father. What she came home the day and she said, your father this, your father, she said, when he entered the court, his shirt was out of his pants. And the magistrate said, push it in the pants. Get out of the court, push it in the court. It was comical at that time. But I'll tell you this. I remember that from a little boy to a big man. So one thing that was in my pants was my shirt when I had to go to court. So it had created in me already a childhood, a fear for that magistrate when I was about to face her. And that is something that is perpetuated in the system. No matter we may not speak about it, that is our culture, that when you go to court, you will get dealt with if you are a male. So many men, and many men in the gallery out there, and even many men right on this table, if they decide to end up in court, may face the same thing.
Again, the judiciary is not here in order to verify, confirm, or rebut what is being said, right? I think we need to make that clear, right? And as Mr. Grant mentioned with regards to the document I'm reading from, in that, it can be eaten, you said? It will benefit anyhow, right? So coming back, but before I go to that, single mothers pay maintenance?
Yes.
It is in a minority of cases.
Okay, right.
We see this whole issue, Madam Chair, of maintenance. It is a very important issue for us to ventilate in this setting. The judiciary, I don't know if they're very familiar or completely familiar with the law, because when men are incarcerated for maintenance, which is a very big travesty in my opinion, the maintenance continues to accrue. And according to the law, it's not supposed to. So men are incarcerated, they're in jail, so they can't make the money. They come out, and then they're placed back in jail. And that's the cycle some men find themselves in. And whereas some men may be deadbeat dads, if you want to use that term, it's not a term I like, there are many men who are being practically criminalized in the system because a lot of people in this country today are losing their jobs or are underemployed or just cannot make ends meet. It's a fact. And as a result of that, you're put in jail. And you're in a cell with bandits, murderers, you're in there with thieves, you're in there with drug dealers, you're in the same cell. And sometimes these men end up placed in a position now to go along with satisfying requests from some of these guys when they go outside. And that's how some of them end up earning money to pay the court. There are men who I have met through the Single Fathers Association, one man in particular, he was medically unfit to work. He brought all of these documents to the court, and the court saw that he's medically unfit to work. The court, in its wisdom, asked social services to pay for that child's upkeep. The man was paying, I think, $800 at the time, and the court asked social services to pay $1,200 towards the child, and did not close or crush the order for the man. So he was arrested repeatedly for not paying the maintenance. After the court saw that he was unable to, and instructed social services who were paying at the time. Another case in point is a man who's been paying for some 10 years to the mother of the child, only to find out that the mother had given the child to another couple. And the money he was giving her was not going to the couple, nor was the money she should have been paying going to the couple. And that man was arrested time and time again. And these are not in any way, Madam Chairman, isolated cases.
Madam Chair, again, we ask the question, what programs and services are provided to single fathers by the family court and the new family and children division? Include whether there are programs and services to mediate conflict disputes between parents. And the answer, subject to the findings in each case, persons may be referred to the family court to 1, co-parenting workshops. Partnership for Peace program comprising 3 elements in the holistic opportunities for people empowerment, hope, for men, for women, or for children. Counseling services, psychologist intervention, mediation services, other specific services eternal to the judiciary. Mediation services. Are you all familiar with those services provided by the family court of the judiciary system of Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, of course. Totally familiar. And I mean, I would have participated in them as well. I would have participated in the mediation service.
So the judiciary gave us good information.
But let me give you a little more information. I would have been, I mean, my personal experience with the mediation, I'm not saying it's everyone's experience, but my personal experience is that even though we were made, it's because of the social perception sometimes, I believe that a mother is entitled to her child, that even with mediation, she doesn't truly mediate to the fullest. Because sometimes she believes that when she gets to court, she'll get her will anyhow. And that was actually proven in my case. We mediated, we were there, and the mediator, even though I spoke to other mediators later on, professionals who said it shouldn't have been a mediation process like that, he actually, like, if she said take 8 days, he was saying, like, this is a good deal, like, take this, you know, normally. So, and that is one thing that was identified to me, I mean, after I gained more experience after that mediation process, shouldn't take place in that manner. So, at that time, particularly in my experience, it was not the proper protocol that was actually used for the mediation process. I know the judiciary isn't here, but I just wanted to, I mean, not a long list, but just identify some sections. I don't know if it would be recorded and they may be able to look at it, where there is current legislation. I heard Mr. Fabian, he mentioned one, particularly that's section 27.5 of the family law, where he mentioned that no arrears should be allowed to accrue while a man is incarcerated from the family law, section 27.5. However, we have a lot of fathers who, while incarcerated, for whatever reason, the money continues to run, and when they get out, there's a maintenance warrant waiting for them, all right? Also, section 21.2, and another issue he coincidentally mentioned as well, when they spoke of giving the power to the magistrate to suspend maintenance, meaning no suspension, and this is something that doesn't take place. We don't see suspension of orders taking place in circumstances where people have been lost their job, or sometimes when they become injured. I had a TSTT dad who fell off a ladder and broke his 2 hands, and the maintenance continued to run, and he was expected to pay the other year after his therapy had completed. So there was no suspension. He wasn't granted that. We have Darrell Phillip, who was a police officer as well. He went before the magistrate. He had a serious heart condition, but a lot of medical information from the police service to have suspension and maintenance until he was better, and possibly put the child on social welfare, because that's a suggestion we've made, even instances of fathers becoming employed and having maintenance payments to be made. social welfare should be made or should be able to come in and assist for some interim or some time. And also, what is very alarming to Section 27(2)(e), they speak about, you know, normally when we hear maintenance, the first thing that happens, well, first if you're brought before the court and you don't pay when you return, if you ask for time and now a committal warrant is out for you, they will imprison you. But I saw that the law, Section 27(e), said there are a number of ways that they could deal with it before imprisonment. When it comes to sale of goods and chattels that the defendant may have, that they may be able to sell or they may be able to seize instead of having the person imprisoned. So this is legislation that is on the books already that is not seen utilized. Also another section, Section 27(4), where the magistrate has the power to determine before commitment to prison if a parent's non-payment was not due to his or her culpable neglect. In this case, a warrant of commitment to prison shall not be issued. So if the magistrate could determine that it wasn't and the person neglecting to pay the maintenance, that the magistrate had the power not to commit them to prison. And these are some of the things that we're not seeing happening. So I can't ask for it to be legislated if it's legislated already. I could ask for them to start to utilize other alternatives to imprisonment if we have some, and I mean, we have other suggestions as well.
On that, Madam Chair, I would like to add, forgive me, recently I was at a World Families Conference, and the acting Prime Minister for St. Lucia, Guy Joseph, made a bold statement there where he was taking to his parliament an act to stop the imprisonment of fathers for non-payment of maintenance. And in fact, to ask that different arms of the state prioritize these men for employment and the amount or the monies due for the children be taken from their earnings, because it is in the interest of all that these men are not incarcerated. It costs the state more to keep that man imprisoned. The family and that man would be part of his current family. In many cases, he has a new wife and children, and he's removed from that family also because of non-payment of maintenance for the child who is with another family. So nobody profits really from the incarceration of these men. And if there is work within whatever programs that the state may have in whichever ministries, I think it's a very good idea that we could take something from Mr. Joseph's recommendation, that they be, if people cannot find work to pay the maintenance, that they be prioritized for employment within these social programs and their earnings be you know, in taking the correct money taken for the fire, we could garnish the earnings and pay the money to the court for the children.
Again, Ministry of Social Development, coming to you shortly. I just want to clear up something with the fathers there. No response anticipated, okay? While incarcerated, the father is still the parent of the child. No need to answer. While on disability, incapacitated, the father is still the parent of the child. Fine. Social welfare should pay for the disability status of the child, or while he's incapacitated for the thing. Point taken, no need to answer. With regards to, oh no, before I go to social welfare, why will some fathers defy their court order as a result of being unable to pay incapacitated for the same reasons, right, basically?
Some men don't want to take responsibility for their children also, right? And we're not negating that at all. But some men cannot find employment. Some men are underemployed. Some men have so much responsibility with their current family and other issues in their life. Sometimes they get behind with their payments. We do not condone non-payment of maintenance.
So therefore, when an extension from here then is that we'll need to bring in family services in terms of family planning and things like that in order to get both male and female, in order to subscribe to these facilities.
And both families.
No, I don't need no answers. You know. I just wanted to throw these things out.
I just wanted to
because
elaborate a little more.
An important point is social.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'll give you the
No, I just wanted to elaborate a little more. I mean, sometimes we say men can't pay, or they're not paying the maintenance, but there's no real transparency or checks that even the sums they're being asked to pay, if they can afford to pay it. And I'll use a short instance, which is actually a bigger issue, where a father previously, Jason Sow, was made to pay during the period of 2012 to 2013 interim maintenance order of $200 per week for one child. And when the final order came into fruition or was put in place January 2017, he was then ordered to pay $550 a week for one child. So nearly triple the cost they decided to. And no, he's not a big businessman. No, he's not anybody extraordinary. So I think sometimes that we really need, because sometimes people would ask if they could pay something, and I must as well admit that sometimes men in ignorance and sometimes partial fear as well, they say, you could pay 300, you could pay 400 a week. Knowingly, they may not be able to do so. Sometimes say, yes, I could pay it, and it goes down like that as well, right? Yeah.
To the Ministry of Social Development, if a single father who genuinely wants to continue caring for his child or children becomes unemployed, does the welfare system have a category to approve continuing assistance to facilitate his continued parenting of his dependents, to support him in continuing to meet his responsibility? All right? And as an offshoot of that, what are the social services for temporarily unemployed males? What can we do now in order now to assist, to lift some of the single fathers that find themselves in this scenario?
Thank you. Chair, let me answer the second part first, and then I'll pass across to our Deputy Director, Social Welfare Division. With respect to unemployed males, or anyone who's unemployed, who's been retrenched, there is a program at the Ministry of Labor. It's the A2O program.
The what?
A2O.
I'm not hearing clear.
A2O.
A2O.
Yeah, it's a program at the Ministry of Labor where they seek to place retrenched workers to make them marketable. They assist them with job placement, interviews, what have you, so that they can be re-employed. Our clients, where that happens, we refer them to the Ministry of Labor for that assistance in terms of their hopeful re-employment. With regard to your first part of the question, I would like to ask Mr. Pollinator to speak to that part of it, please.
Yes, good morning again, or good afternoon. Just for clarification, the nature of the grants at the Social Welfare Department, and we speaking to public assistance, I want to just comment that would add to the discussion that went before. And I know a lot of psychosocial issues were being raised, so maybe it wasn't the appropriate time, but apart from the public assistance grants, right? We have a cadre of general assistance grants, which doesn't in no way carry any apparent or evident bias. And quite a number of males would have accepted this grant. And I know we're speaking of single fathers here, but the nature of the grants are not so designed in any way to, let's say, specific to probably any type of male, because there's one issue of gender, right? But then single fathers is also takes into consideration a nature of that gender there. The actual being single, right? We have, so public assistance, since its inception, has been a grant that catered to the unemployable in general and not the unemployed. You wish me to continue? Sir?
Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. So the grants that we would issue, or the assistance we would give them, will, in the normal sense, speak to where the head of household is unable to provide, not simply because of not having a job, which of course we understand and will agree is a need. But the nature of the grants was so designed in the construction of the act and in the minds of the person that constructed such that we will have this category of people who are unable to provide for themselves and their dependents. So the general provision will allow for the person who has a medical condition, and where you have dependents, if the person who is deemed the head of household may be, apart from that medical condition, be imprisoned, right, of course, deceased, the situations of where you fail or unwilling to maintain your children. When the act was amended, however, right, and I would probably say that my thinking is where you would probably be unemployed, the thinking would have been, okay, public assistance would provide for the unemployable, and probably where you're unemployed, the other agencies, let's say Ministry of Labor, Service Commissions, may pick up, may be responsible for probably treating with the aspect of actually being employable and having the capacity to earn, right? But notwithstanding that, we have over the years recognized that there are situations that will come before, and in particular where, let's say, gain in the capacity to, not so much the capacity, but the availability of employment, right, is limited. And as such, the Act allows for the payment of public assistance for a maximum of 3 months, right, where the specific criteria, as outlined in Act in general, we can bypass that for the purpose of issuing that grant. So in a lot of instances, even said single males or even males in general, on their own behalf and on behalf of themselves and even dependents, would have had the opportunity to access that grant.
If I may, there are programs that are offered by each of the ministries, I would assume gender, as well as social development, that cater to single parents. That's a fact? Are there programs that cater specifically to single parents in both of the ministries?
In the Gender Affairs Division, not specifically to single parents, to parents on a whole, male, female, everybody.
What about social development? Are there programs that specifically cater to single parents?
The programs are catered to parents, whether you're male or whether you're female. It's not gender specific.
Do we admit as a country that we have, I don't have the figures before me right now, but we do have a large number of single parent families. Is it the belief that single parent families warrant different support and different capacity building than families where you have two parents present?
Madam Chair, I just want to make some comments before I answer you. I listened to this discourse, and a picture to me, and I'm just expressing how I feel about the discourse so far. A picture is painted of discrimination against men with respect to access to their children, with respect to custody matters via maintenance, and it paints a picture of gender inequality and inequity with respect to single fathers. Coming from being a former welfare officer and also being a former National Family Services officer, the statistical data that exists has shown that the women are the ones that are at a disadvantage when it comes to inequity with respect to especially maintenance. And I could vouch for that for a fact. Many of the times the women came for public assistance is because the fathers are not supporting the children. They will be asked to take court action. They will take the court action and they'll bring the court paper to the welfare division. And in that way they would start. Many of the times they come also is because there are issues that pertains to the fact that the fathers are gainfully employed. Some being police officers, some being having a profession and refuses to maintain. And the state will support these children. We will ask them to also take out take out a warrant to have these men. And there are cases where they would come to us indicating that the warrant officer knows the men, and they will not give the warrant out to the men. There are many cases like that, and I'm sitting here and I'm hearing where fathers are feeling discriminated and unequal treatment.
If I may, the objective of this inquiry is to deal with single fathers who are willing to support their children and the challenges they face. The fact that we have 75% of single-parent homes being led by mothers and only 25% by fathers indicates very clearly that what you are saying there is not untrue. But we are dealing with the subset here, that 25%, where there are fathers who are single fathers willing to support their children and the challenges they face. So what you're saying is quite true, but that really is what we are looking at. We are looking at where fathers want to, the challenges they face, and inequality. So there's, in no way are we discounting the problems that are faced by women. We know that those are real, and if we were to look and have an inquiry about single mothers, we would hear that side of the story, right? So in no way are we trying to say that single mothers do not face pressing issues as well, but we are just saying that there are also single fathers who are doing their best and they are expressing that they have difficulty. So let me just clear that up one time, because I understand your angst, because it may give that impression, but that is not what we are saying at all. We are just listening to this subset of people and how they feel about their efforts, right? So what I was trying to get from you is, do we as a society consider that there are these group of people, single parents, who require specific support in terms of capacity building, coping mechanisms, and so on? Do we have that for single parents? And if we don't have it for single parents, do we need to have it? And if we have it for single parents, is it necessary to even have that broken down to having something for single fathers in specific who want to support, who are facing the challenges that may be outlined, feelings of frustration, and so on? I don't want to even raise it, but there is a case in front of the courts right now of a father who would have shot a child. And anytime these things happen, and there was another very sad case of a woman I actually taught as a student in St. Francois, where she was killed late last year. And the comments that came out is that it surrounded access to a child. And you know that this is a single father who was reacting quite badly to problems with accessing a child and that kind of thing. So what I'm trying to get at is, are we as a society reacting in the right way, in the correct way, to supporting the needs of single parents and single fathers specifically?
At National Family Services, we encounter these type of matters from different sources. We get referrals from the court. We get referrals from other agencies. We get referrals from the Single Fathers Association also. No matter how they come to us, once they come to us, we assess the entire situation. We look at their needs. So it doesn't matter whether you're a single father, a single mother. And yes, a single parent would have a little bit more challenges than a two-parent household. So we don't have data, but anecdotal, I can say that. Also, what we do is we try to, once we assess their needs, we try to address the needs, even if it's not addressed within the division or the ministry. We liaise or network with other agencies to fulfill the needs. And we do, in terms of, you were talking about support, it could be financial support, social support. Social support is a big aspect. I heard the Single Fathers Association referring to childcare. That's also an issue, whether it's a single male or single female, that is always an issue, getting available and affordable childcare. And there are other issues that would come up when you're raising a child in terms of in terms of the stages of child development and the different behavioral change that you will encounter as a child grows older. And those would be challenges in terms of communication, in terms of discipline. And so it's not different in terms of whether you, in that respect, if you're a two-parent or one parent, in that respect, in terms of the stages of child development, in terms of school challenges, in terms of social challenges. But obviously, if you're a single parent, the challenges will be a little bit more, because then you have to attend to everything by yourself. So in terms of our case management, we try very hard to address those issues.
Chair, if I may, that spoke to the issue of the counseling and those psychosocial services. With regard to the grants, I'd like to ask my Deputy Director to maybe speak to that part of it, please.
Sure.
Yes, Madam Chair. As I made mention, I just touched on it. We have quite a few grants. I don't think, for the purposes of time, that I will probably run through them, but we have a booklet here where listed about 11 grants. That comes under general assistance funding. I'll just probably identify probably just a few of the significant ones. Household items, we have persons who would have experienced disasters, pharmaceuticals, education, dietary, clothing. These are just some of the grants that come under the, well, primarily under the ministry in general, but social welfare has a mandate to distribute most of these grants.
I don't want to cut you, but and we coming to the end. But what I really was getting to, I know there are the grants, and we've established that there's no, they are gender neutral, even though sometimes the application based on who you meet might be a little bit. But what I was really getting at is that support in terms of somebody to speak to, advice to be given, to support, not necessarily financially, but that social support for single parents. So Mrs. Puransing would have addressed and said that, okay, there is support offered, not specifically catered necessarily to single fathers or mothers, but whoever is referred, you make an attempt to deal with them based on their needs, right? So that is the kind of thing. Is there something from the OPM gender division that deals with that support?
Yes, Madam Chair. We have one of our major programs, the Defining Masculine Excellence Program, that caters for the needs of men. In some of those modules, we have things such as self-esteem, a man and his mother, anger management, conflict resolution, parenting sons and their developmental needs, parenting issues to address single parenting, estranged parents and teenage parenting. We also have intimate relationship, couples, emotion and sexuality in that module, in that Defining Male Excellence module. That program came on stream in 2003 and has been running right up to 2017, where we have graduating from that program 1,695 male so far, and that's a continuous program.
All right, so again, there's a program by OPM dealing with men, not necessarily single fathers, but it covers some of the issues that may arise for single fathers. So let me ask you specifically now to the Single Fathers Association, because I saw as well that you offer services to single fathers. Did the necessity for you to offer services arise from the fact that there are certain things that single fathers need to hear, need to be supported with, that maybe were not present in some of the more generalized offerings by the different institutions?
Yes, most definitely I'd agree with that statement. Definitely advise them as into a lot of the legal, their rights per se, a lot of the things that they may not, because we admit that even in here that sometimes some of the challenges are because people are ignorant of some of the laws that are in existence, the rights, even the lawyers sometimes I think ignorant of some of the laws that are in here right now as well. But our challenge, as I would say, the reason that a lot of single fathers will have to come to us is because of culture. I mean, sometimes culturally, even though it's a single parent program or a single parent, we have seen that it's been heavily directed towards single mothers. So, because single parent equals single mother before we started Single Fathers Association and people started mentioning single fathers. And that is the reality of it. I mean, even more so, I mean, we see it. I mean, no disrespect intended, but even in just a second ago, where in other words, the mention of single motherhood always seems to drop the level of the appreciation for single fatherhood. So, and that's the challenge we face. We start highlighting issues that are directly affect us, and then we say, well, do sorry about that because single mothers are X, Y, Z. But we are affected and we have challenges as well, and this is why we have to state our challenges, just as single mothers would state theirs as well. We must have that space, we must be able to do that. And some of these challenges are actually, some of us, we share challenges as well. The same challenge that the lady, Miss Jack Martin referred to. There are fathers who have warrants out for mothers, for bench warrants that pay for custody, that the police haven't brought them, the police can't find them. They have big maintenance. Corey Francis has a massive, his child is autistic, and he has a massive maintenance warrant. The mother has over $80,000, and she hasn't been brought before the court. So some of the things we face are very similar as well. So it isn't something that only single mothers face, but things that single fathers face. But exclusively as single mothers would have things that affect them that don't affect us. We have things as well. And these are the things that we express to these fathers when they come to us. Teach them ways of getting around there, teaching ways of, being long-suffering, being patient, putting certain strategies in place. Sometimes they're going to all the wrong places to get help, but then there are other areas where they keep bouncing their new wall because they've gone to all the agencies and the agencies don't provide for them, particularly as we had highlighted before with the public assistance. Imagine Mr. Marlon Lewis is there, you have 7 children, your wife now died, and then you go there. He exclaimed to me that he felt like they told him if he was disabled, then he would get assistance. He felt like cutting his hands off. And that is the reality of it. So there are certain things exclusively to single fatherhood that we face challenges with. Another challenge, as we made mention of, maintenance. When it comes to accountability and transparency, we are imprisoned if we can't make our contribution to maintenance, because it is the belief that what we contribute, the mothers contribute a percentage monthly as well. We contribute $1,000, they contribute $1,000, $2,000 is the welfare of the child for the month. But we are imprisoned for ours. We have no guarantee, there's no transparency to even know that the mother is making a contribution and she's not imprisoned for it. But for years, it has been law that if the father cannot pay his own, he alone must be imprisoned. He alone, his payment alone is identified as well.
Is the law father or the person who's to pay the maintenance?
Well, yes, non-custodial parents, right? Non-custodial, but in the majority of cases, look at the lines in maintenance and you'll know who are the non-custodial parents. In most of the cases, particularly the magisterial courts. So we are non-custodial parents most of the time. And men face challenges and other challenges. For men and women, we share the same challenge. So we represent men and women at times when it comes to us making the payment at the court and the mother receiving lengthy lines. When we've been calling on the courts, we sent recommendation to the judiciary to have electronic payments made available so that men don't have to go to the lines to pay, mothers don't have to go to the lines to collect. So whereas we appreciate that there are similarities, there are differences that must be mentioned on both sides as well, from single fathers and single mothers, independently.
Thank you so much. We are drawing to the end of our time. I will ask Mr. Ford, do you have any other questions you'd like to ask? A closing question?
Let me just... Mr. Ramdahin from the Office of the PM. In your submission, you all mentioned that there was no gender impact assessment conducted on the draft national policy on gender and development. All right, so as a follow-up to that, I presume you all plan to have one, a consultation, and then what format will it take in terms of, the necessary NGOs that would be invited to this forum, and when you all plan to, bring it on stream?
Okay, basically I am holding on for PS Jacqueline Johnson, who is on vacation right now, right? So what I was told is that basically once the policy gets the green light to be implemented, and it's you have a trial period and implementation, data will be collected in terms of what are the issues. You will have teeth and problem basically in the implementation of the policies, and these issues will be captured for basically going forward and trying to address whatever issues and fix the problems. I would like to also, in closing, before we close, in terms of, I came from the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, and recognizing that a lot of things we're doing here is reactive, right? And if we have the parenting policy, parenting programs implemented at youth levels before the youths become parents, right, give them that educational background, a lot of issues we face in here could be eliminated, right? So everybody goes into the, transition from youth to adult, become a parent, and they just don't have the skill sets to do the parenting properly. So this is just a recommendation. The second recommendation I'd like to put forward is that there's a disconnect, social disconnect, coming from a technical background and looking at the logic in terms of having an equity policy, right? There's nothing like that. I asked, where's the equity policy? There's nothing like that existing. I asked whether ministries are collaborating in terms of those who provide social services, if we have overlap in programs, if we have gaps in programs. And there's a social services coordinating committee that is basically, it was active as now, but basically has dropped off and defunct. That committee should be focused, given priority, in terms of bringing all ministries of social services together so that we can network and integrate and put forward, identify the gaps and issues, and align our programs to meet those, address those gaps and issues. So those are the two comments I would like to make. Right.
Yes. Okay, again, and you are the acting PS in the Office of the Prime Minister. So all the overlaps, whether positive or negative, throughout the ministries, I trust that, again, you'll be utilizing your office, whether acting or not. You know, when Ms. Jackie Johnson returns, again, those information will be passed on. Because, yes, we need to ensure that the Ministry of Sports and all the other relevant ministries where we have human beings being operational, that, again, we are able to think. So Ministry of Sports, Social Development, Ministry of Health, where we can tie in with regards to this draft national policy on gender, so that at the end of the day, when we make this draft national policy, it is comprehensive and it will entail whether fathers or mothers, youth or the elderly is taken into consideration as we go forward. So again, keep in mind that the PS, Mr. Ali from Social Development, said that they're looking at February, and I trust that coming out of your office of being the Office of the Prime Minister, again, some sort of headway will be taken in order to coincide that with February 2018, we do not go further down the ladder, and the whole point and the whole purpose will be just become null and void.
Yeah.
At this time, I would like to invite the delegations to make their closing submissions, and so we can invite Mr. Asif Ali of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, Mr. Ian Ramdahan of the Office of the Prime Minister, Gender and Child Affairs, as well as Mr. Rondell Fields, to make their closing submissions in that order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have taken note of the comments and the discussions today, and we commit to give consideration to those. We look forward to receiving the UNICEF report, as mentioned by Member Ford. I think that would definitely inform some of our deliberations as we go forward as a ministry. I just want to reiterate the ministry's commitment to adhere to the principles of social justice and equity as it pertains to the protection of the family, which, as I said earlier, we see as a cornerstone of our society. Mr. Ramden spoke about the need for the rationalization of these services across the social sector. Cabinet would have recently approved the social mitigation plan for the public sector that seeks to do exactly that, where we look at the different social sector agencies, address duplications, and ensure there's alignment so that there's a holistic approach and in terms of service delivery to our clients. So definitely that is something that is being done. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services is the lead ministry for that social mitigation plan, and it speaks to an oversight committee that would seek to do exactly what P.S. Ramden spoke to. What I found from today's discussions is that there's a need for ongoing and some more public education with regard to the services that are offered by our ministry and the other social sector ministries. And also, Mr. Pauline spoke to it, the issue of sensitization of our staff to ensure that the legislation and the policies of the ministry are applied equitably to all our clients. I just want to close by just identifying some of the initiatives that the ministry will be pursuing towards that end. We're in the process of finalizing our standard operating procedures that will be used across all our divisions so that there's a consistency of the experience for all our clients in terms of how we apply our grants and the criteria for those. We're continuing discussions with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development with regard to the issue of social housing. We are transitioning, as I mentioned earlier, from our current paper-based system to our SSMIS, Social Sector Management Information System, that seeks to address the issue of client case management. And I think most importantly, we have on the agenda the issue of promoting positive values, attitudes, and behaviors among our program beneficiaries to ensure that they transition towards sustainable self-sufficiency. Again, we thank the committee for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramdahan.
I would like to thank the committee for having this forum. Basically, it was very informative, and the information that we gathered here basically would be utilized by the Office of the Prime Minister, Child and Gender Affairs, in refining what we're doing as well as addressing the needs. Right. Just want to highlight that you need to have issues, all issues, to basically act on issues, and being in the Child and Gender Affairs for a short stint, the first thing I asked was, where's the issue log? You know, we don't have an issue log, a national issue log of all social issues in terms of what are issues affecting single fathers, single mothers, even parent. So we need to build that, and basically we started up already. In the good thing, what the OPM has done, we have already started a national registry on capturing, the gender-based violence, which we hope to expand to capture that, expand the registry to capture all other gender-based issues, right? So by building on that issue log, we basically to identify where are the shortcomings and where are the corrective actions required, as well as where alignment and synchronization, where these things required, and which programs are working or not working, and where we could adjust and make recommendations to fix. Right, so this is what the OPM is trying to achieve. We have implemented institutional capacity to start capturing gender-based issues regarding the males. It so happened that the public may not be aware of this, so whenever issues are being raised, we would like the public to basically forward these issues or CC us on issues so that we would have capture these issues. We have Ms. Martin here. She is the director of the Gender Affairs Division, and she would have basically a lot of programs that we would have being implemented pretty soon, and would like to advise the public basically go on the website and check the programs that are being implemented. And we hope to work closer with the single fathers to basically help resolve the issues, and as well as network with the Judiciary and other ministries, in solving the problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Fields.
Finally, we just, from the bottom of our hearts, as men, as fathers in Trinidad and Tobago, we would like to thank the Joint Select Committee and all stakeholders here for seeing that it is valuable and important to give us a fair hearing. We are parents, we love our children, we take our children to the best of our abilities. There are many fathers, a lot more fathers out there than we give credit to society in Trinidad and Tobago who love their children and want to be vested in their lives. It's not only the father's responsibility, but it's the entitlement of a child to have his parents involved in his life in that capacity. And I must commend this Joint Select Committee for taking the initiative. I mean, people may say a lot of things about the organization, but we are driven, we are purpose-driven to truly be there to do all that we do to make sure that we preserve our parental space in society. Thank you for having us once again.
Thank you for being here. Allow me to just summarize some of the main things we have spoken about and some of the recommendations that may have been made. The definition of single father seems to be unclear between the agencies who use it in their work agenda. Data collection is necessary to inform issues which affect single fathers and influence policy. As the major number of non-custodial parents are men, single fathers are faced with long lines and significant time challenges as they seek to pay their maintenance orders. Policies may not specifically deal with the issues of single fathers. Social services policies may not be interpreted to allow for single fathers to benefit from some of the available grants. Unwritten rules that children belong with their mothers may exist. Single fathers are assumed guilty of sexual impropriety accusations by mothers, and custody may be revoked without the opportunity to defend themselves. Consultations with and letters to the Judiciary and Law Association may not have resulted in satisfactory levels of response with regard to the issues where there are breaches of custodial and/or care and control orders by the courts. Some of the recommendations: consultations on draft gender policy should be engaged upon to clarify the term of single father. Parenting support needs to be extended to single parents and single fathers specifically to deal with particular issues that may arise in those situations. Issues such as their rights, legal options should be covered and explored fully. Electronic payments for maintenance would make the process much more efficient, both for single fathers as well as for the receiving mothers. Single Fathers Association should be part of all consultations on parenting policy as well as the gender policy. An equity policy needs to be considered so that gender issues are dealt with adequately across other specific policies and procedures. The social mitigation plan, spearheaded by the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, should include a robust communication plan to make the public aware of the services that are available. Sensitization of the general public to the support needed by single fathers in our society may go a long way in changing the culture of our society as they look at single fathers. The Public Assistance Act needs to be fully reviewed and a culture change enacted within the Ministry of Social Services so that awareness of the needs of single fathers and interpretation of the laws can be adequately addressed. Recommendations from the consultations must be taken into consideration when legislative change is being considered. Spurious accusations by mothers should be punished, and legislation should be enacted to ensure that this happens, and redress when custodial single mothers do not adhere to the ruling of the courts should be sought. The Family Law Act needs to be reviewed so as to avoid single fathers who cannot afford to keep up their maintenance payments for good reason being incarcerated. In some cases, legislation is in place, but discussion with the Judiciary is necessary to have consideration given to single fathers who qualify for the exceptions already legislated for. Alternative measures for payments of maintenance should be explored other than incarceration. Maintenance payments should be matched to single father income, and accountability measures for maintenance payments should be legislated. So these are just some of the main points that have come out in our discussion that we would want to note. And at this point, I really want to thank the delegations that would have made themselves present. I want to thank you for your frankness in sharing. I want to thank you for your willingness to consider the points of views that are raised. And we look forward to the report being sent to the various ministries and so on, and we look forward to this issue being ventilated even more so that the various issues of persons in society can be taken into account. And of course, when we speak about parenting, we speak about fathers, we really are speaking about our children and this generation of children that have to live in the world that we as the adults, as the legislators, create for them. And so we look forward to these discussions having a ripple effect that redound to the benefit of the children who are involved in these situations and the future of our country. Thank you again for being here with us. Thank you to our listening and viewing public. And at this point, I would like to declare this meeting now adjourned.